Today, we're talking about Grand Homes. This luxury home builder may look like one of the best, but the reviews aren't always so convincing. So are they really a quality builder? Well, hey there, I'm Wendy Pennell, and today we're gonna go beyond the surface and take a deeper look at Grand Homes. I'm sure their homes may look like some of the most luxurious options out there, but you have to ask yourself, what may be hiding, beneath all the glitter and glam? We need to separate fact from fiction and get an honest perspective on what it's truly like to invest in a grand home. So let's start off by taking a good look at the company itself. All right, how big are they? Well, according to their website, they've built homes in over 240 communities and over 38,000 people live in a grand home. They started in 1986, and you'll find grand homes mostly clustered to the north and east of Dallas, but you'll also find a few to the south and west. Okay, let's talk about pricing. Grand Homes is among your higher end builders. In my research, I found homes as low as like $595,000 in their Edgewater community out in Fate, but that's certainly not the norm to see the price that low. Their upper end of pricing soars all the way to $2.9 million, and you'll find that one in the Kings Crossing community in Parker. So what are you paying all of that money for with Grand? Well, in the bigger picture, all right, bigger picture, if you wanted to build a truly custom home, all right, you would buy a lot, then hire a custom home builder. Then you'd create your building plans and go from there, okay? So that would be an example of a true custom build. Picture Grand Homes kind of like a step below that. It's a large company that selects its communities and selects its own lots, okay? So in that way, you're coming to them. You're not just picking, any lot in any area. But within that model of your big box builders, Grand Homes are among the most customizable. On the other extreme, you have production builders, right? Who really aren't going to allow any customizations. I mean, for that matter, they may not allow new builds at all. So D.R. Horton comes to mind, okay, when I think of that, like just purely inventory homes. But Grand Homes are on the opposite end of the spectrum, being highly customizable. When I think of that term, customizable, all right, I think of both structural as well as design features. When it comes to structural features, like you can take a one-story home and add the second story with a lot of freedom in how you want it. You can pick how you want your rooms arranged. They have skeletal floor plans that you can then move around with a great deal of flexibility. When people hear structural changes, they tend to think of things like adding a fireplace, but Grand goes so far beyond that. Similarly, with the design center, the sky's the limit. There is so much you can do here, but here's where I want to warn you. Prepare to be nickel and dimed to death. All right, when we have worked with buyers customizing Grand Homes before, I have been astounded on what hasn't been included as standard. Like for example, cabinetry in the laundry room. You have to pay extra for that. Otherwise, all you get are washer and dryer hookups. That's it, all right? These are luxury upper end homes, and yet very little is standard. It's just so easy to get excited about how much you can customize without realizing how quickly you can go over budget. Grand Homes is definitely a luxury product. They have gorgeous elevations and elegant floor plans, but if you want to build with Grand, you need to start way below what you want your final number to be. I mean, it all depends on how much you add, of course, but be prepared to have massive structural and design add-ons to your final price. And this is where I want you to be really careful. All right, you need to know the market value of the home. If you overspend on your home and it doesn't appraise for that amount, that's on you. You will pay the difference. And Grand Homes isn't telling you any differently either. I mean, check out this quote from their contract. Seller makes no representation or warranty with regard to the appraised value of the home. If the appraised value of the home is less than the purchase price, purchaser shall pay the difference between the reduced loan amount and the purchase price in cash at closing. Now, one of the first things we do personally with our buyers is give them a market analysis. And that's important with all home purchases, but especially in a situation where you'll end up adding a lot to the initial purchase price. Now, moving on. Grand homes have a very elegant and stately elevation, and the same is true of the interior. This is the builder where you'll find homes with like a high-pitched gable roof, decorative stone, decorative brick, decorative garage doors. Some of them will have like a castle-like appearance, complete with like turrets and spires. That is very much a style you can expect with Grand. On the inside, you'll find elegant staircases. Okay, sometimes they'll be curved. Sometimes they'll have more of like a modern, like wrought iron look. In the living area, you'll definitely find those vaulted ceilings with, the great wall of windows. Something you won't always find elsewhere that you can find with Grand is they'll extend those vaulted ceilings into the kitchen and dining area. Like many times, many homes, you'll have like the vaulted ceilings in the living area, but not the kitchen. Well, with Grand, you can get that vaulted look throughout. You'll also see, the wall of windows extended into the dining area, not just the living area. So you have a lot of natural light. In the primary bathroom, you can go really wild with all marble, freestanding tub, oversized shower. Outside, you can opt for a vaulted ceiling on the patio as well, which really makes the area seem very spacious and elegant. Style-wise, it'll be comparable to homes you'll find like with Toll Brothers, Perry Homes, Taylor Morrison, and Shattuck. Though they do a lot of the customized new builds, they do also build inventory homes. With their inventory homes, you're gonna find like a 2-story home with vaulted ceilings. So this is not the builder you're gonna go to if you want like a sprawling single-story ranch style home. So how do all of these beautiful features line up with their customer service? Well, this likely comes down to like each individual community. Now, in our experience personally with Grand Homes, we found management is very reachable, very human. Like you can communicate with the top layers of the company through the sales consultants. Now let's take a look at some of the things you need to be on the lookout for in their contracts. In my experience with Grand Homes contracts, they're not the most predatory out there, but they also don't always make it easy on you to understand. Like one thing you have to know about the Grand contract is that it's somewhat old-fashioned and it's not very readable. They include a lot of handwritten parts and diagrams, graphics, that type of thing in their contracts. So that part of it is fairly readable, but the actual body of the contract, all right, it's in like 8-point font with these huge paragraphs. So some builder contracts are very readable, but Grand Homes is not one of them. Like you take one look at them and you just feel exhausted. Like if you didn't need reading glasses before, you're gonna need them to get through this contract. But here's a really important question. Under what circumstances can the deposit be returned? Well, they got a lot of rules for you to follow here. You have to apply for financing within 5 days of going under contract. Your loan approval time period is 14 days. And within those 14 days, the lender must complete, sign, and return the lender addendum. Now, 3 days after the earlier of expiration of the loan approval time period or the date the purchaser's loan application is denied, the contract tells you this: upon timely receipt of such notice, all sums paid by purchaser to seller under this agreement shall be refunded, less all reasonable costs and expenses, including those associated with initiated custom option orders incurred by seller with this transaction. So with these Grand contracts, you have to read the timelines carefully. The design center appointment must occur within 7 days of the signing. Here's what the contract says. At the design center appointment, purchaser is required to deposit 50% of the cost of any custom option and 100% of any design changes. So you have to make your decision on your structural and design changes before your loan approval time period expires. If you can't get loan approval, your deposit will be returned less all reasonable costs and expenses, including those associated with initiated custom option orders incurred by seller with this transaction. You might be thinking, what are reasonable costs? And that is a bit vague. Remember when I said Grand Homes are highly customizable and you'll spend a lot on custom options, while initiated custom option order deposits aren't returned if you can't get financing. Here's what they say. Any design changes and structural options must be completed with the signing of the agreement. So let's just say you get carried away at the design center, you make all kinds of changes, then you can't get your loan approved. You've now lost an enormous amount of money. So with Grand, more than ever, get that loan approval well up front, long before you sign the contract. Next, for what other reasons can you lose the deposit? Well, there are many ways. If you can't get your loan after the loan approval time period, if you can't close on time, if you fail to make any payments that are due, fail to sign documents due for the loan, or otherwise default here under. Seller will give 5 days notice, and then they can sell the house to someone else and keep all the money that's changed hands so far. Take a look at the text here. The seller shall have the right, without further notice, to place the property for sale to third parties with no further obligation to purchaser, and seller may terminate this agreement and retain the deposit and upgrade deposit as liquidated damages. So a lot of risk there for losing your deposit. Okay, next question. Does Grand Homes have the convenience clause in their contract? And if you're not familiar with what that is, many builders have a clause that allows them to get out of the contract for any reason or no reason at all. Okay, we call that the convenience clause. Well, let's check out paragraph 8, entitled Unresolvable Disputes, Seller's Right of Termination. All right, here's what it says. In the event that at any time during the construction of the home, any dispute shall arise between seller and purchaser, which seller determines cannot be resolved, seller shall have the right to terminate this agreement, whereupon the deposit made by purchaser hereunder shall be immediately returned to purchaser together with the additional sum of $250. Okay, so that's the convenience clause. What about the dreaded escalation clause? And if you're not familiar with that, basically it allows the seller to raise or escalate the price after you're under contract. Well, thankfully, no. From what I read, I did not find the escalation clause within the Grand Homes contract. Now, what about penalties if you can't close on time? So, closing day rolls around, you can't close. Well, other than potentially losing your deposit, they can increase the purchase price to the current base price of the neighborhood, or if you have to extend the date of closing, you can pay Grand an extension fee of 2% per month of the unpaid purchase price. Another important question, do they include CC&Rs in their contracts, or do you have to go hunt for them? Well, they tell you they exist, but they don't provide them. Okay, so a little hunting will be required. Now, this is an important distinction because like with a pre-owned home, you're going to be provided a copy of the CC&Rs and you'll have time to opt out of the contract if you don't like what you see. Well, that's not the case with Grand, all right? It's on you to look up the deed records, find those CC&Rs and decide if they're acceptable to you. Now, something I wanna tell you about their incentives, all right? They show as an incentive something that's already included in every one of their homes, which is their energy package. So to me, that's a bit deceptive. I've never seen any of our Grand home buyers actually have to pay extra for the energy package, right? That actually comes in every Grand home. So is it really an incentive? But they're gonna show it in the contract as a promotional item. So they make you feel like you're getting something extra by calling it an incentive, but you really wanna call them out on that. I mean, if it's standard in every home, that's not an incentive. Let's talk inspections. Many home builders have restrictions on having their homes inspected by a third party. So it's important we talk about that. Like, what requirements do they have of their third party inspectors? Well, the last time we were out at the Summercrest community in Midlothian, I asked the sales consultant if they had any inspection restrictions, okay? He said they didn't have any restrictions whatsoever and that he had sold many homes there. The contract also doesn't mention any inspection restrictions. So that's really good to know because that's not the case with many builders. Here's another important question. What about property tax finality? Well, this is what Grand has to say in their contract. Real property taxes shall be prorated to the date of closing based on the actual tax amount due. If the actual tax bill has not been issued prior to the date of closing, then the proration shall be based upon the most recent tax rate and assessed value of the property as of the first day of the year of closing. So this almost certainly gives Grand the advantage of getting to pay taxes on land value only. So count on a huge escrow shortage the first year you own the home. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about there, typically at the time of closing, the taxes will be based on land value only. So Grand Homes will pay their prorated share based on the land value. By the time the actual property taxes come due, it will have adjusted to land plus improvement, meaning, also the house. And the tax bill will go from like $800 a year to maybe like $20,000 a year. So you have to know going in that you will have a huge escrow shortage that first year. All right, what about community types? Do they tend to build in master plan communities with amenities? Now this is truly mixed. If you want a grand home, you can find one in both master plan communities like South Point in Mansfield or Wellspring Estates in Prosper, or you can find one in a lovely secluded community with no amenities, some of which are surrounded by green space. You'll find that in places like Lakes of Summercrest in Midlothian or Buffalo Ridge in Salina. Grand Homes puts it this way. Communities range from small, quiet neighborhoods where you can relax and unwind, all the way to communities to keep you busy with amenities such as golf courses, parks, pools, fitness centers, and more. Grand also tends to build both in neighborhoods with other builders and on their own. In Buffalo Ridge, you have this tiny little pocket community and it's Grand Homes only. But then in communities like South Point and Wellsprings, you have plenty of other builders. So you definitely have both options with Grand. All right, let's talk about reviews for a minute. What are people really saying about Grand Homes out there? Well, I always like to take it local first. Google Maps reports ratings in around the 4 to 5 star range. South Point in Mansfield gives them a 4.2. Prairie Ridge in Midlothian gives them a 4.0. Summercrest in Midlothian gives them a 4.7. Wellsprings in Salina gives them a 4.1. Buffalo Ridge in Salina gives them a 4.5. Breezy Hill in Rockwall gives them a 4.8. On places like Yelp, you'll see a lot of reviews about their customer service saying things like, my sales consultant was Mike and he was proactive in serving me to go through the details to answering all my questions. Or the best in my experience as a realtor, best product, best service, best leadership. Thank you, Grand Homes team. But then again, you'll always find the occasional scathing comment. Here's one. They are a liar. They are totally a different people after you sign the contract. Beware of the Grand Homes. We have a very bad experience with them. I am the one frustrated Grand Homes buyer. Of course, any person's experience can vary for a lot of different reasons, but the fact of the matter is that you never know what kind of sales consultant you'll get, and it's always a good idea to have someone who only has your best interest at heart in the transaction, which, by the way, if we sound like your kind of realtor, you'll definitely want to check out our Let's Find Home questionnaire that you can find in the description section. Now, how about the Better Business Bureau? Well, the ratings there are mixed. The BBB on their own ranks Grand Homes at an A+. The customer reviews are a 1 out of 5. However, there are only an average of like 5 reviews. So I'm not really sure how much weight that number holds. Let's talk about quality of construction though. Are Grand Homes actually as quality as they look? We've talked a whole lot about the elegance and the grandeur of the Grand Home, but one thing we haven't touched on yet is their construction quality. And this is a hot topic in the market right now, or more specifically, sheathing materials are. And if you're unfamiliar with the term, HRTI describes it this way. Sheathing is the material installed directly over the studs and interior insulation of a framed house. Well, a lot of builders in Dallas right now are using a very thin form of sheathing called T-ply. And since this is so much on the forefront, I wanted to find out what Grand Homes uses. I mean, after all, this really speaks to the level of quality in a home. So here's how my research went. And let me tell you, this is a great example of how reachable management is. When I was trying to find out what type of sheathing they use, I've reached out to the sales consultant for Somerset Park in Rockwall. The consultant there is outstanding to work with. Immediately, she responded that she would get the answer. And not long after that, she responded. Okay, she told me, hey, Wendy, this is from our vice president I hope this helps. We use RMAX with taped seams for wind and water sealing. The RMAX also has an added value of an additional R3 insulation value versus thermoply, OSB, etc. The thermoply itself is only on structural panels, which is still covered by RMAX. They could pay for a zipboard sheathing instead, priced with a PSA. We do not believe OSB or Tyvek wraps are good products for sheathing. Okay, so the actual vice president answered for me. I mean, I have a lot of respect for that. And the answer is they're not using thermoply all by itself, and that's a good thing. Now, you might be puzzled right now. What I mean by sheathing or thermoply or even the other terms I'm referring to. Well, like I said, okay, sheathing is a hot issue with new construction right now, and a lot of people feel very strongly about it. So much so that I made an entire video about it that you can watch right here. In the meantime, Wendy out.